We're starting with Trivial Pursuit, which is a computer game adaptation of the classic board game. 1 to 8 players can enter their names and then take turns rolling the virtual dice, which in this game is represented by the main character TP throwing a dart. Then the players choose a subject area that they can move to based on their role, and if they answer the question correctly they get to go again, otherwise the next player takes their turn. There are 6 larger spots on the board representing wedges, and if a player gets a correct answer then they add that colour wedge to their piece. Once someone has earned all 6 of the wedges that represent the 6 different question categories, then they need to get to the centre square and answer one final question to win the entire game. If they are incorrect then the game keeps going. I have quite strong nostalgic feelings towards this game because long before I finally got my own Commodore 64, our family computer was a BBC Micro, due to my mum being a school teacher who taught computer science during the early years of her career and therefore needed access to the computer at home. One of the games that we had and I played was Trivial Pursuit, and I would spend hours just playing it by myself and seeing if I could answer the questions. When I did get the Mindbenders pack years later, I was pleased to see that the C64 version was included here. For the most part it is the same game, just looking a bit different, but even the default question pack seems to be the same as the BBC Micro version. I distinctly remember being asked about the theme tune to the Enidin line over and over again. One of the cool things about this game is that sometimes TP will walk over to the stereo and play you a snippet of music, or pull down the screen and show you something on the projector. After you've been asked a question, the game will then ask you if you got it right or not, rather than making you enter your answer and checking it against the database, which means you can cheat if you are just playing by yourself, which I would sometimes do if it was a wedge question, but I was really just cheating myself, wasn't I? If played with a group of people, you would all keep each other in check, so cheating wouldn't be an issue. So I really love this game, and as a result of all the fun hours playing it, my love for trivia games persists even today in games like the Buzz series from the PlayStation consoles. Going back and playing it now though, it is still a lot of fun. Obviously the questions are extremely dated, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy seeing if you are able to answer some of them. As for the Zap crew, Julian and Richard thought it was a ton of fun, though Julian thought the game really wouldn't work as a single player experience. I beg to differ. Gary though found trivia games boring, and so Trivial Pursuit, although well made, didn't really do much to change his mind. All 3 reviewers found the TP character rather annoying, although you can just turn him off and spare yourself his snarky comments. Overall they awarded the game of 91%, which I'm glad to see. Of the 4 games in this collection, Trivial Pursuit is definitely my favourite, and I'm awarding it a first class ticket. Next up is Split Personalities, which I have covered once before when it showed up on one of the Commodore format cover tapes. At a basic level it's a slide puzzle where you have to assemble the face of a well-known political figure from the 80s, such as Ronald Reagan, Maggie Thatcher or Gorbachev. It actually started life as a spitting image game, but Domark couldn't secure the official license to the TV show, so they had to change the name. There are added wrinkles to the gameplay that make things more complicated though. You are up against a fairly strict time limit, which will cost you a life if it runs out. There are lasers on the sides of the game arena which will zap back your pieces as well and cost you a bit of time for doing so. There are also bits of random junk that are not part of the picture you are trying to make that can be removed from the board by shoving them out of the holes that open and close intermittently. And finally there are bombs that also need to be got rid of before they explode and take one of your lives. As the levels progress, the time limit will get shorter and shorter, and the fuses on the bombs will also be shorter as well, making things increasingly difficult. I think Split Personalities is a pretty decently made game, but I'm not especially good at it, and rarely make it much past level 2 unless I've got an infinite lives poke turned on. It does get a bit samey after a while though. All 3 of the Zap reviewers, which were the same trio as the ones that looked at Trivial Pursuit, really loved Split Personalities. They said it had a good sense of humour, nice graphics, really great music, and an exciting pace that kept things interesting. They ultimately gave it a score of 93%. I'm not quite so keen on it myself personally. It's worthy of a decent score somewhere in the 80s, I think. Game 3 is Snare, brought to us by Thalamus, which were the game publishing wing of Newsfield Publishing, who also put out Zap magazine. I will take their comments with a pinch of salt this time, I think. You control a ship from a top-down perspective, and you can turn it at right angles with ease. You need to hunt down the enemies on a stage and destroy them, which opens up the exit to the next level. Things start off fairly easily, but the difficulty soon starts to ramp up. You get introduced to jumping very early on, but soon after that there are teleporters added to the mix, and the levels grow increasingly maze-like and confusing, which is where the puzzle elements come into play. I think Snare has some really slick presentation, but I never quite jived with the gameplay. I would always progress to a certain point and get stuck, and I never felt compelled to even turn on infinite lives to see the later stages. I'm sure there must be some out there who really loved this game, but I thought it was just kind of okay. Over in Zap, Robin's thoughts about the game actually match up to my own quite well. He says the 90-degree snapping is disorienting and the game can get frustrating as it's very easy to fall into a pit and die. This is mitigated a little bit but with a continue option and the lack of a time limit of any kind. But there was something holding them back from giving the game a sizzler, so they settled on a final score of 88%. This is not too far off from what I think it's worth, though I would maybe go slightly lower at about 85% myself. The final game in the Mindbenders pack is called Confuzion, and that's actually a pretty apt name. It's another slide puzzle of a sort, except this time you are trying to guide a spark to a bomb by making the fuse line up across different tiles. I think this is a solidly made game with a decent presentation, especially given that it came out quite early in the lifespan of the C64, but I can't say that I really enjoy it all that much. That being said, if I practiced a bit and grew proficient enough to actually carry out most of the manoeuvres shown in the rolling demo built into the game, I might start to get into it a lot more and enjoy it. This is a game I have a lot of respect for, but I'm not sure I have the patience to get good at it. The Zap team all quite liked Confuzion, but all three of them also mentioned how hair-pullingly frustrating it can get. With 64 levels to get through, if you enjoy the game and want to take the time to master it, it will last you for absolutely ages. You need to be quite dexterous with the controls though and learn those advanced gameplay techniques in order to stand a chance. Zap gave the game a score of 89%, which again is just a bit too high for my own tastes. I would maybe give it a slightly lower score than Snare at about 83%. So overall, the Mindbenders compilation contains 4 very solid, dependable games that offer a ton of gameplay time should you get into them, but they are not especially exciting or sexy, are they? Trivial Pursuit is my favourite by far, as it's a great game to just relax and answer some questions to without much pressure. The other 3 games are all quite stressful to play but are decently made. I used to boot up every game in this collection from time to time, but Trivial Pursuit was the only one I would keep on for any extended amount of time. So that brings episode 2 to a close. What did you think of the Mindbenders compilation if you played it? I have one more episode locked down already, which is the Konami Arcade Hits compilation by Imagine. After that I will probably start to delve into some of your suggestions before picking some at random from the Compilation 64 website, which is a great resource for this sort of thing. The next one will be up in 2 weeks' time, so hopefully you'll come back then. In the meantime, take care.